Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to this week's Living Torah, and I'm feeling a little bit more normal, not back to it. Of course, normal is relative, but this cold crud, whatever in the world it has been, every night I go to bed thinking, okay, I'm going to wake up in the morning and have my energy back and wake up next morning, and it's not there. And so it's just been a tough one to get over. But I'm gonna make it, I think. Could have gone to the doctor and got a bunch of antibiotics and all that kind of stuff, and probably would feel about the same way right now, and body'd be weaker and all kinds of things. So I just handle it natural way, and that's the way it is. A couple things from last week. I didn't mention, we talked a little bit about the clothing, but I kind of cut that off a little, didn't give you what our plans are. And right now I'm not really sure. Maybe that's why I didn't put out the plans. But I have a meeting this weekend, and during that meeting we're supposed to be getting together and trying to figure out kind of what we're going to be doing, our next stage of whatever this clothing thing is going to be, clothing going to Israel. So we have some that people have already sent in at this point, and we're just holding that for right now. And as soon as I have a little bit more information, and I think that should be next week, I will let you know. The other thing is letters. We're working on that also. Just was doing some emails on that this morning. And on our website, on the homepage, go to the right-hand side, and there is the Isaiah 56 project, and on there is a copy of the letter that I wrote that will be going to Israel. And you can just take a look at that if you'd like, read through it, and maybe it'll give you a little bit of an idea of what we're looking for. So again, no witnessing. Okay, we're not trying to preach at people. This is about your journey, and I'm not sure where all this is going to go. But no matter if it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, this would be a good idea for you. Be a good idea for you to work on personally. And maybe even you could possibly make it into a family project if your whole family's been involved in this. And it'd be a good thing just for you to maybe get some things straight in your own mind of where you've come from and of where you're heading. On the website, I've added a lot of things this week, been working on that. Under videos of Israel, videos from Israel, same area there on the Isaiah 56 project. I've added, God willing, by tomorrow morning. I'm still working on this. I put 3 videos up. Number 1 will be the Itamar video that many of you have seen already of the Torah scrolls coming in, the mezuzah being put on the wall at the synagogue, the new synagogue in Itamar. There's also a teaching that I did in Israel, standing there at Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum. I did a teaching there where the tree of the righteous, the one for Corrie ten Boom. I did a teaching there, and we recorded that and got it up on the internet. And so that will be there. And also, I had a friend of mine that did have, for those of you that have ever been around Moshe Kempinski in Jerusalem, he's got a famous spiel that he does. And so we've tried to get that recorded a few times. And if you've heard it, you know that Moshe is very soft-spoken, and is very, very difficult. I'll turn my heater down here. Very, very difficult to get him on video, on a good audio. And so we took the best one we've had for a while, and we reworked the audio the best we could. So again, it's a little bit hard to understand in places, but I think you're going to get the message is going to come through pretty clear. So those will be on the internet. And all the videos we're doing, as far as the archive videos, I'm going to be switching over from Windows Media Player to QuickTime because of the use of so many people with iPod, iPad, whatever. We're going to be switching over to QuickTime, which is a little bit more compatible with those. If you do not have QuickTime on your computer, all you have to do is go to, just type in QuickTime, and it will give you a free download site. If you have a problem with that, email me, and I'll be glad to help you work through that. The other, just real quickly, a couple things in the news. I was watching this morning, of course, this shooting in France. And probably by the time I'm finished with this video, the news will have changed. But as I got it here just a little while ago, they had a standoff with this man. He's a Muslim. Wow, that's surprising that he would have been the one that shot all these different people. 3 different shootings, and this one in France was a rabbi and I believe 3 children, and just the way that they reported that it was just cold-blooded killings. They said that the gunman got so close to one of the children and shot him from such close point-blank range that he actually had gunpowder marks on his skin. You know, these are children, and whatever the religious wars are between people, but when you involve shooting children, you've just taken it to a new level. And of course, that this guy would be a Muslim. Well, surprise, surprise. Whatever the media, however they spin it, there's still a bunch of cowards hiding behind children and women. They're cowards. So, on a little bit better note, I had some email contact with some friends up in Canada this week, and I told them, when I was over in Israel, there's not a lot of Americans there right now. The American tourists have become an endangered species. And you know who I saw over there? We saw a lot of people from the Far East. We saw a lot of Japanese groups and people like that. There was also a large group from South Africa, and there was a number of Canadians. In fact, with our group, the guys that went over to Prune, there were a number of Canadians there. And Canada has taken a very strong pro-Israel stance right now. Of course, we understand that one day all nations will turn against Israel. But for right now, Canada has taken a pro-Israel stance. And wow, it's amazing. Their economy is doing better than most. Their lifestyle in Canada is doing better than most. I wonder if maybe God is saying something there. So for those of you in Canada that are watching, and we have Canada's our number 2 nation right now as far as where our listeners come from. Canada's number 2, and I believe that kind of a toss-up normally between either Belgium, either Belgium or South Africa on a weekly basis. So for those of you in Canada, Kol Hakavod, more power to you. Stand strong in the midst of all that's going on around us. All right, we're going to get into Matthew chapter 5, and I'm hoping that possibly by the end of the month we're actually going to go through Matthew chapter 5 and get to Matthew chapter 6. I didn't say I promised I would, but I said I'm going to hope to. Now, let's go back up, what's this been, a month and a half ago? For I tell you, in this chapter 5, verse 20, for I tell you that unless your righteousness is far greater than that of the Torah teachers, which Torah teachers, I hate the way that he did that, it's the scribes and the Pharisees, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. And we got to, once again, let's just go back and set. What's the context? The context of all this is that it is more than outward works, okay? The Torah is more than outward works. I think that's a kind of a theme of this whole book, really, is that our obedience has to be more than the outward appearance, the outward works. It has to come from the inside. And he was saying to them, regarding the scribes and Pharisees, that it was all about outward appearance, and they were not doing these things from their heart. Now, that's not true of all of them, and I don't believe that Yeshua was making a blanket broadcast, but was speaking to specific groups of scribes and Pharisees. Remember, we have in the book of John, Nicodemus. Okay, we have a number of scribes and Pharisees that were following Yeshua. And so, to say, well, it was all of them is not really I don't think what the context of the verses are to begin with, but it's definitely not something we should do, making a blanket broadcast. It's kind of like, well, all churches are anti-Semitic. No, they're not. All churches are against Torah. No, they're not. Anytime you put in there somewhere, we put in there, All of this, all of something, every rule has an exception, It's kind of like, well, everybody's doing it. No, not everybody is doing anything today. And so let's don't just be kind of joining the trap here of dumping all the scribes, all the Pharisees, all the religious leaders, because they were not all of this mindset. There were many of them, as would be proven in history later on. There were many of these people that would actually follow Yeshua. And so, with that, we start to move on. You have heard that our fathers were told, do not murder, and that anyone who commits murder will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who nurses anger against his brother will be subject to judgment, and whoever says fool, and whoever calls his brother, you good for nothing, will be brought before the Sanhedrin. That whoever says fool incurs the penalty of burning in the fire of Gehenna, or of hell. Now, there is, and probably most of you were taught the same as I was taught, that Messiah is tearing down the Torah, and he is, kind of pitting the Torah against his own teachings, and he's coming up with new teachings because that old was done away with, and he's ushering in the new. Nothing could be farther from the truth right here. Even the rabbis, even the rabbis, let me retract that statement. The rabbis have taught through the years that when Messiah comes, that he would expound on the Torah, that he would literally take the Torah to another level. Now, you can't take it to another level and do away with it at the same time. Those two concepts do not agree with each other. You have to keep the Torah firmly in place, the teachings, everything that is there, and then you expound upon it, which he will actually reference in just a moment in some of his words. Let's go back to our teaching about the house. Okay, the house is, it's the 2x4s and the foundation and the roof and all those things, and then you move into the house. And what do? You bring fullness into the house. You bring further meaning into the house by making it a home. And Yeshua is doing the same thing right here as he is speaking about these scriptures. He is bringing more of the fullness as he is kind of literally moving into the house called the Torah. And he's bringing forth the meaning. So Yeshua is teaching the context of all this, the matters of the heart. And he says, you have heard that our fathers were told, okay, do not murder. Going back to the Torah, going back to the foundation of the Torah. He is saying in the midst of all the things that are going on, including some of the things that their scribes and Pharisees were doing, because see, they were setting up fences. Okay? Wait a minute. They were setting up fences around the Torah to protect the inside law. Okay, this is a concept. If you've never heard this, I don't want to go into it a lot, but let's take the kosher dietary laws. Okay, the kosher dietary law is here, and then we put a little fence around it and make it more of a law, then more and more and more. Eventually, it is possible to get so involved in the fences you forget about the law that is there. And so Yeshua is kind of a little bit in your face with some of these scribes and the Pharisees who had set up so many fences around the Torah, around the laws, the instructions of the Torah, that they had really taken to the place that it became more about the fence than about the instruction itself. So Yeshua is saying, okay, let's go back to what the instruction said for itself, and now I'm going to put a fence around it. See, he wasn't teaching against fences. He was teaching against fences that became worthless over time. And so he says this, you have heard that our fathers were told, do not murder, and that anyone who commits murder will be subject to judgment. That's what the Torah says, okay? Go back to Exodus chapter 20. Go back to Deuteronomy chapter 5. This is what the Torah says. The next word in verse 22, the beginning word of verse 22, is where things become a little cloudy if we read it just as it is. And of course, we're reading in English. He was not speaking English in that day, I don't believe. Pretty much positive of that one. But I tell you that anyone who nurses anger against his brother will be subject to judgment. The English word but is used to pretty much, in most cases in our language, destroy everything that was said up until that point. Your boss comes to you and says, you know, you've been doing a very good job, but, and you know that whatever comes after this word but is negating everything that is being said up until that point. That is not the word here. That is not the proper use of this word. In fact, if you go back and do a basic, just a basic search in Strong's, the word can be translated but is better translated moreover, or let me expound on what has been said. So let's go back and read this in that context. You have heard that our fathers were told, do not murder, and that anyone who commits murder will be subject to judgment. But now let me expound upon what that verse is saying and put a little bit more meaning into it. Let's bring more fullness into the meaning of the verse. Not adding to it, but bringing more fullness, painting a little bit more of the picture of what is within the lines of that verse. You could actually almost put it this way. You ever did the paint by numbers? I didn't. I couldn't stay within the lines. I found that really boring. But I digress. If you ever had that, you get this picture and it's all these little lines and stuff and numbers and everything like that. And if you have the patience to do it, what do? You get the brush and you get the paint and you start putting the paint within the lines. And if you do that, with every brush stroke that you put on that paper, you're bringing forth fullness of the painting. And Yeshua is doing the brush strokes with the paint. He's not adding to, he is staying within the numbers. He is staying within the lines. He is using the exact color that should be used within each one of those little spaces to bring forth the fullness. And he says, whoever nurses anger against his brother will be subject to judgment. Nurses anger. Okay, and the rest of these verses we're going to read comes in about this. It's all the same concept here. Nursing anger. Okay, what happens when you nurse anger instead of dealing with it? Okay. What is he? Here's the other aspect I believe he's trying to tell the people is this: don't nurse the anger, deal with the anger, do something about it. Okay, and this he'll go on and say this a little bit more later in just a couple of verses here, and we'll actually get to that in just a moment. So I'm going to kind of skip over that for a second, and then he says, whoever calls his brother you good for nothing, or then calls them you fool, or the most translations put raka, which is these words are basically the same. Why is it okay? Should we never call somebody a fool? Well, yeah, that's basically true. That should not be a word that we use for someone else. Now, they may be doing foolish things, but that does not mean they're a fool. Well, it may mean they're a fool, but who am I to make that final judgment? That's the key to the verse, is that when I decide, or when you decide, that we are going to place a final word of judgment upon a person, what are we doing? We're putting ourselves in the place of God. That's not our place. You know, a person may be doing very foolish things. Think back to your life. Think back to mine. There were a number of times, there have been a number of times in my life, sometimes not that long ago, that I have done some very foolish things. Now, for some reason, the Almighty did not allow me to continue in that, but allowed you an opportunity to repent from the foolishness that we were doing, to turn around, to teshuvah is, you can't put those two words together, to do teshuvah, there you go, that one works, which is to turn around and to walk the other way, to walk back toward Him. And so we are not to place ourselves regarding another person. We're not to place ourselves in the position of God in their lives, because we don't know what's going on. We don't see the big picture. We don't see things from His standpoint. You know, there were many opportunities in my life for people to just say, you know, he's worthless. It's over. Life is over for him because of the way that I was going. But God saw something from a different aspect. And so we need to be very cautious that we do not, when it comes to the people around us, when it comes to our children, boy, this is a rough one. I see this so many times. People speak so much garbage into their children, and then wonder why they're turning out that way. You know, if you call yourself, your child, stupid all the time, oh, you dummy, you'll never amount to anything. You know, keep on. Keep on with that line of conversation toward your children. And then you wonder why they're turning out stupid, good for nothing. You'll never be able to keep a job in your life. And then you wonder why they can't. Look in the mirror. Part of the problem, in fact, I would say a majority of the problem in most children's lives is the parents. It's not that children are stupid. It's the parents are acting stupidly. I won't say that you're stupid. They're acting stupidly. And one of the things that needs to happen is we need to look at the verses like this and see that when we speak things into a person's life like this, words have power. I'm not talking about some new age mumbo jumbo. I'm talking about words having power. The spoken word. Go back in your own life and think about it. You can think of how many of places in your life that somebody that you respected said something. And they may not have meant it. It may have just been, you know, some kind of a reaction to something or whatever, or just kind of idle words that are being spoken and they weren't spoken right. And if those words were never dealt with, they still have a profound bearing in your life today. Be very, very careful, and this is a little off subject, but I don't believe that it's far off subject. Be very careful of the words that you're speaking to other people. Be very careful the words that we're speaking to our children, to our spouse. Kidding around is one thing, and I love to do that, and I get myself in trouble all the time because of it. But we better be careful that we don't take it too kind of over the edge, okay? So, Then he goes on, it says, so if you're offering your gift at the altar, at the temple altar, and remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift where it is by the altar and go make peace with your brother. Then come back and offer your gift. These verses, and I've looked at a number of commentaries and some of this. I was trying to see if I get a few other thoughts, and it's interesting that many commentaries take these verses and the next one that we're going to get to, and they just kind of they'll be writing a commentary, and it's like those verses don't exist. They highlighted them with a black magic marker. Oh, I don't understand those verses, so I'm just going to delete them. Well, we're not going to do that. I may be wrong in my interpretation, and probably I'm going to grow in the interpretation. I hope so as I continue on. But we're going to try our best to deal with each one of them. So, does this mean that every time that you start to pray, let's say that you have something happen between you and someone, and every time that you start to pray, you think about that person, you go to them, and there's no way to reconcile, and so you come back to pray, and you think about them again, so you go back again, and I don't think that's what the verse is actually saying. To me, and this is just my opinion, separation, dysfunction in the family, having brothers and sisters, I'm not just talking about physical brothers and sisters, but spiritually, having things that have happened between people should grieve us. There's no doubt about that. There should never be a day that if you have, and if you've been doing this if you've been living life for any length of time at all, there are people around you, there are people that things have happened in life, and it's difficult. We should never take joy in that happening, in things going wrong. It should always continue to grieve us. There's people that I know of that I have no idea where they even are. I had a very good friend many years ago, back in the 90s. We were very, very close. And this person just went crazy. I mean, went nuts. And I have no idea what happened to this person. They went back into all kinds of crazy stuff of life and moved off, and I have no idea where they even are. To this day, that relationship grieves me. I find myself at times praying for that person, that somewhere along the way, that what God started in their life would be accomplished in the end, would be brought forth in the end. And that's happened not just with that one person; it's happened with many. Here's a little bit more of what I'm kind of feeling these verses are telling us. We need to always be willing to have a road to reconciliation. But understand that reconciliation takes two parties. I can desire all day to be reconciled with someone. If they don't want it, if they don't want to stop and deal with some things, maybe there was some things happened, there was some lies that were told, and all kinds of things happened. And if they don't want to stop and deal with the lies and deal with truth and deal with changes that they're gonna have to be made, I can't do that for them. Okay? Come to the realization that we only have sun's coming out here, lighting's kind of getting a little bad there, but we only have a control over one person in this thing, and that's us. I don't have any control over another person. I don't have any control over their actions, over their thought processes, over what they think and do, and I don't have control over that. I can only control or attempt to have my thoughts, my actions submitted unto Him. And so for my part, I need to be willing at any time to be reconciled to another person. If the person is willing to repent. See, this is not just a kind of a fluffy little thing of, oh, I'm sorry, let's huggy kissy, and let's buy flowers for each other, and everything's going to be nice from here on. That's not reconciliation. Reconciliation is when two parties come together, and it may even get worse before it gets better, because you're going to have to deal with some issues. It's not just compromise. You know, there's this whole thing. I don't want to bring in politics, but it's kind of the easiest way to do it. Well, we just need to work across the aisle. You know, these people on this side of the aisle need to work with these people on this side of the aisle. That's not going to happen, okay? Because you have convictions. And what is being said there is, well, you need to disregard your convictions and become like me. Now, reconciliation is when both people come together and they work together to find out what happened, what went wrong, what's going right, and within their own convictions come together and walk again. So to me, that's what these verses are talking about, is be willing. And if there's anything in your power that you can do it. But there comes a point. I've had to, personally, lay down a law a couple times in life. Don't want to go specifics here. Basically, I had one situation that I had to finally say, here are the, yes, I'm willing to attempt to reconcile, but here are the requirements on your part for that. If you're not willing to accept these requirements first, then there's nothing we have to talk about. So reconciliation is a big thing. It's not always going to happen. It's just not. All right. If someone sues you, come to terms with him quickly while you are on the way to court, or he may hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the officer of the court, and you'll be thrown in jail. As indeed I tell you, you will certainly not get out until you have paid the last penny. Does this say you were wrong? No. It doesn't say anything about you being wrong or you being right. It says if someone sues you, if someone has something against you, try to the best of your ability to reconcile it quickly. Don't let it get out of hand if at all possible. For the longer it goes on, wow, I've seen this so many times. The longer it goes on, and I've had things that, you just can't reconcile. You know what it is? It's like somebody standing on top of a mountain with a feather pillow. And all of a sudden, they can stand there for a while with that feather pillow and kind of wave it around in the wind, and no big deal, But eventually, if you wave that feather pillow around on top of a mountain in the wind, it's going to get a little tear somewhere, as it's maybe dashed up against a rock, and a couple of feathers are going to fall out. And when there's 5 or 6 feathers that have fallen out of the pillow, you could put the pillow down and reach over and grab the feathers. But once all the feathers get out, nobody's bringing them all back. Nobody is bringing them all back. And the longer that things go on, the worse and worse it's going to get. Again, we cannot just become a doormat. We go back to the verses. How blessed are those who make peace, they're peacemakers, not just peacekeepers. And understand that within the context of all this, it's God's timing. Sometimes things are done in a person's life because God desires to deal with the person's life. He desires to deal with us. He desires to deal with somebody else. And I've seen times that people get so involved in reconciliation that they forget about His timing, and it becomes an incomplete work. All right, so reconciliation is something that's not just you just don't write a little book on it. It's not a little booklet, a little pamphlet, of step 1, 2, 3, and 4. It sometimes has to take a lifetime. All right, let's go on. Verse 27. You have heard that our fathers were told, once again, let's go back to Torah, do not commit adultery. But I tell you that a man who even looks at a woman with the purpose of lusting after her has already committed adultery in his heart. If your right eye makes you sin, gouge it out and throw it away. Better that you should lose one part of you than have your whole body thrown into Gehenna. And if your right hand makes you sin, cut it off and throw it away. Better that you should lose one part of you than have your whole body thrown into Gehenna. Boy, these are some really wild verses to deal with here. You have heard it said, you've heard it in the Torah, and of course this is again in Exodus chapter 20, Deuteronomy chapter 5, do not commit adultery. Okay, but what is adultery? Is adultery just the act? No. Adultery, what Yeshua is doing is he is expounding on. He is doing moreover, I'd like to expound on this and tell you that there's some of you who have already committed adultery by your actions that did not go to that action. By your lustful eye. By the things that you're doing. And wow, if this is not one that is right in our society today, how difficult it is in this day to walk in any kind of purity. I mean, you feel like you want to do like the horse blinders. The Amish have the horses that they got the blinders like this that they're going down the road, they don't see the car going by. For most men they're listening to me, you go through most of your life wanting to have blinders. You just go ahead and just put a mask over your face. There's no way in this world that we're living in today to walk in any purity of sight, any purity of thought outside of His absolute anointing. And still, it's very, very difficult. And so I'm not going to get into all the things of the television programs and computers and all of those things. If what you're watching is conducive to purity of thought, to purity of sight, the things that you can control. Okay. There are things that you and I can control with a remote control, with an off button, with a delete key, with whatever we need to do. Okay, there are things that we can control that are out there all the time in front of us. Then there's the stuff that we can't control, like walking into a mall. What are you going to do? Are you going to become a hermit? That would be kind of nice sometimes, but you can't do it. Just go into Walmart. The flesh show that is these days. I grew up in Florida at the beach, and I don't even like to go to the beach anymore. I don't like to go to public pools anymore because of the flesh show. And some of it's not just the one, there's other people that should never have been sold a bathing suit. It's just bad. But you know what I'm talking about. And I just can't stand to even get around a lot of this stuff these days because it has become so over the top, just outrageous. And so, we could talk about that all day long. You know what bothers me? Is those within the body of Messiah, those within the family of God, who aren't any better. You know, there's a scripture we'll get to later on that says, if you cause your brother to stumble. Ladies, I want to be very, very blunt with you. Many of you are causing your brothers to stumble. Young people, young ladies, you're causing your brothers to stumble. Men, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Allowing your wife to even to go out of the house dressed like that. To allow your daughter, parents, you're allowing your daughter, your son, you know, guys can do the same thing, you know. This shouldn't be. We should be a people, and the book of Timothy talks about this. We should be a people of modesty. And however that plays out in your life may be a little bit different. But I know for all of us there should be, you know, you may have all kinds of areas over here on the, let's say on the right side of modesty. But there is a place. I'm not telling everybody you got to wear, you know, you got to wear certain clothing, you got to do this, you got to do that. But there is a place for everyone that it becomes immodest. And you cause your brother, your sister to stumble. And guess who's in judgment then? So I would just say to all of us, maybe we need to be people that set a standard, not that are allowing the standards to dictate to us. We need to set a standard for things. Verse 31. It was said, whoever divorces his wife must give her a get, a divorce document. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except on the grounds of fornication makes her an adulteress, and that anyone who marries a divorcee commits adultery. Well, this one will get you in trouble right here. And there's all kinds of things that have been said about this one. And once again, we have the lines have been blurred so much in the world today that people have no clue where the line even is anymore. Let's see, how am I going to, let me deal with this. First of all, we have to, and most of you know that there were a number of different thoughts in, there were denominations within Judaism at the time, we could put it that way. There were two main ruling thoughts of the day. It was Shammai and Hillel. And both of these men were dead by the time that Yeshua was talking here, but the thought processes that they had were very widely adopted in that day, and was a little more on the judgmental side, a little stricter. Hillel on the other side, a little bit more merciful. Well, let's kind of blur it a little bit. And we'll see actually times as we go through the Gospels that there were times that Yeshua sided with Shammai. There were times that he sided with Hillel. And, there was times he kind of went against, I guess, both of them and went off and went straight back to the Torah. But in this one, he is siding with Shammai. Hillel had said, if your wife does this or this or this or burns the toast, or I don't think it was that bad, but, he had come up with kind of a list of things that could be done for, to give an excuse or reason for divorce. Hillel, on the other hand, was very strict. And Yeshua is siding with Hillel and says this, except for the ground of fornication. Now, we can read it as the ground of fornication and just, lay it straight out. But is that really all that Yeshua is speaking of? What is fornication? In a marriage covenant, what does it mean to walk in fornication? It means to break the covenant. So, is it possible for someone to be in a marriage relationship and for there to be a divorce and there never be the act of fornication. Well, I think Paul will talk about that later on, of if a believing spouse and an unbelieving spouse, if the unbelieving spouse breaks the covenant, then the believing spouse is released. So we have to be very cautious of how we read these scriptures. And if we just read the basic halakha, the basic letter of the law, the letter that Yeshua is speaking here, if we read it in that aspect, what are we going to get? We're going to get the same legalistic trouble that has been for centuries, even in the words of Yeshua. We have to see that he's saying much more than what he's actually saying. He is saying, I think, that except on the grounds of a person breaking the covenant, and fornication, of course, is kind of the main thing that we think about when we think about breaking of the covenant. Makes her an adulteress. If anyone marries a divorcee, commits adultery. And this has brought on the whole discussion through the years of I used to be in the Assembly of God. I was licensed Assembly of God. And if someone had gotten married when they were 17 years old to somebody who was 17, neither one of them had ever been in church before in their lives, had no idea who God was, and they'd gotten married, and 2 or 3 years later down the road, they'd found out that this was just crazy, and they'd gotten divorced. And then 20 years in the future, 20 years go by, and one of them, let's say the man of the two, comes to Messiah. Truly comes to Messiah. Well, the Assembly of God doctrine says that person cannot be licensed. That person cannot be ordained in the Assembly of God because they were divorced. Is that what this verse is saying? I don't think that's what this verse is saying at all. We're talking about two people here that are, I believe what Yeshua is saying. And of course, I'm going to have people disagree with me, and that's okay. This is between two people that are living according to the Torah. Okay? If a divorce happens within the realm of two people that are living by the Torah, then, if you've broken one covenant, you're probably going to break another one. So it would probably be better for you to not get married again, because it's probably not going to work out either. And all you're going to do is it's going to get worse and worse from there. You need to find some reasons here for what's going on. And remember, I'm trying to put this into a teaching of about 10 or 20 minutes, something that I spend hours with people on the phone. Somebody calls me and says, Mike, what about adultery, and what about this, and divorce, and all these things? I literally have spent hours with people on the phone discussing these scriptures. And I'm just putting enough of it right here to probably get me into a lot of trouble. So be very, give me a little break here, and just take this and maybe allow what I'm saying to cause you to have some discussion. But let's don't be so quick to judge someone regarding adultery, or scratch that, regarding divorce and remarriage. Let's don't be so quick to just rip a verse out of the scripture and throw that verse out there without stopping to understand and stopping to try to understand what may have gone on prior to this. Remember back over to these verses of, I tell you, one who calls his brother you good for nothing, or you fool. What's the judgment here? The judgment is you're trying to be God. Okay, when it comes to things like this of divorce and remarriage and things, let's don't be so fast to become God. In fact, I just soon not try to be there anyway. But so many people I have seen through the years that have tried to just take this verse and just throw it out there and make a judgment call that is over everyone. That's not what I think Yeshua is saying here. All right, with that, we're going to, God willing, go into next week about vows and the infamous eye for the eye and tooth for the tooth, and loving your enemy. Wow, that's going to be a fun one. So, with that, Shavua Tov. God willing, I am going to feel better next week. I'm going to have my energy back because this is just getting crazy. I go take some more nutrients and see what I can do, and got some web work to do. So hopefully by tomorrow I'll have those under videos from Israel. We'll have those links up, and I'm going to be working. I've got like 1,400 pictures to go through and try to sort through all that, and that's just going to be through the next probably next months as I'm working on that to get that done. Again, hopefully next week I'll have the clothing, and go ahead and start on those letters. Let's go ahead and get started on that and see what we can do. Again, it'll be good for you to do it, I think, anyway. So with that, Shavua Tov, have a wonderful, blessed, and prosperous week, and Bezrat Hashem, we'll see you next week.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.